we're back for part 2. We are having such deep and rich conversations with Donalyn Miller. We have a lot more information to share with you. So here is part 2 with the Donalyn Miller.
Okay, finding times to read, like on picture day, when kids are waiting to go into the bathroom, when an adult walks into your room to talk to the teacher, etc. Please share the story of how other kids that walked into the cafeteria and saw your students reading while waiting for the assembly to begin.
That was you, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, I knew it was.
So when I worked at an elementary school in Northwest ISD, I was teaching 5th grade, and I was really trying to teach I looped from 4th to 5th with a group of kids. And I was trying to really teach my students the art of sneaky reading or stealing reading time, because it is a rare adult that can sit at their dining room table and read for 30 minutes. Most of us can't do that. So how do adult readers fit reading into their lives? Well, we steal the reading time. 10 minutes before bed, we take a book with us when we're going to run errands or we're going to get our hair cut. We go down to get our driver's license renewed or go to jury duty or we go to an airport. We are taking something with us to read as our boredom insurance. Or as my husband calls it, reading emergencies. Yeah. You never know. He says you never know when a reading emergency might befall you, right? Because I tease him that he would take a book with him to the mailbox to check the mail, just in case some adventure happened to him between the front door and the mailbox. But most kids don't, if they don't grow up with readers, modeling that for them, or even if they do, they may not be able to unpack that piece of it. So having kids read, take their books with them to the restroom line. They can read their book while they're waiting until it's time for them to go. Assemblies, picture days. So I had all my 5th graders that day bring their books with them into the assembly because I knew my principal wanted the 5th graders to come in first to the gym.
And they're waiting for everybody else.
And then they're waiting for 4th grade to come in. So I knew my 5th graders, all of our 5th graders, would be sitting in that gym for 15 minutes till the kindergartners came strolling in. And kids will find a way to fill their time.
Yes, they will.
Yes.
Yes, they will.
We talk all the time about time on task, and I joke, kids are always on task. It just might not be our task.
Exactly.
So they take their books with them. They could sit on the floor and read, and then that was keeping them under control while we were waiting, but they were also practicing the sneaky reading. So when the 4th graders came in, a little 4th grade boy stopped, and he looked at his teacher and he said, when we're in 5th grade, we get to read our books during the assembly. He thought it was like a present, like a prize.
That, when I read that, I just stole my heart. I think you even told it when I've heard you speak many times, and I was like, is that not precious? Is that like...
He thought it was like something the big kids got
to do it.
That's wonderful.
And so those reading emergencies, I know that's a lesson for you, where the kids actually get to think of, oh, I could have done my reading here, or I could have done my reading here. And it doesn't have to be sitting for an extended amount of time. It could be 10 minutes here, it could be 15 minutes here.
Well, a whole conversation in my class is about who can read in the car and who can't. Because some people, I get motion sick in the car, I can't read in the car, I listen to audiobooks. But kids come in on a Monday morning and just ask them, make a list on the board, or they could do this during a library visit. Times I had to wait on somebody in my family this weekend. Kids have to wait a lot. Oh, mom had a meeting. I had to sit in the back of her office till the meeting was over. Little sister had dance practice. Car broke down, we had to wait on a tow truck. Like, these are all times when kids could be reading. It just doesn't occur to them.
Had to wait for a haircut.
Well, I got my hair colored this weekend, and I was reading, and then I was at the sink getting my hair washed, and I had my book up like this because it's an arc, and it's Stacy McAnulty. I always say her name, McNulty. McAnulty. Anyways, but it's her new book that's coming out, I think, in October, and I was like, oh, it's such a good book. So she was laughing at me. She's like, that must be a really good book. I said, yeah, it's so good. It's so funny. But that was my reading emergency right there. And you had a student named Tristan.
Tristan wasn't reading very much when he was in my class. I mean, he read in class, but he wasn't reading very much at home. And when I talked to him about it, he says, I'm so busy, Mrs. Miller. It's hard. He's 11. Like, oh, honey, come see me in 2 decades.
Yeah.
When you're maybe a dad and maybe working a full-time job, and then we'll see if your definition of busy has changed. But he had football practice a couple nights a week. He was on a select football team. He was distracted by homework and going outside and watching all these other things. So I just asked him, Tristan, can you read in the car? And he said, yeah, I can. Throw that book in the back of the car, read it 10 minutes on your way to the football field, read it 10 minutes on the way back. And Tristan said, you'll let me do that? Because in his mind, reading was 30 minutes at the dining room table with the oven timer.
You have to be still.
And if he couldn't do that, then he was doing 0. But I think most of us would take 10 minutes over to the football field and back.
I think our definition of independent reading needs to change. The time limit, the constraints. I think we have to think ourselves as adults. Why can't we let our kids do that too?
Oh, but for Tristan, what I'm trying to, it's almost like occupational therapy, if you think about it. Like, here's Tristan's life, here are the obstacles that are preventing him from reading. How can we provide him with a suggestion that's reasonable within the context of what he sees as an obstacle? So football practice was a big obstacle for him. Well, if you can read in the car, Tristan, why don't you hit 10 minutes on the way over and 10 minutes on the way back? That had not occurred to him.
Yeah.
But that's 20 minutes of reading right now. Or even if he only did it 5 minutes on the way over and 5 minutes on the way back. But he's also learning a skill of how to fit that reading time in because he's so busy.
I love it.
And if you're stopped in traffic on 20, you've got time to read a little bit. I keep a book in the car.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I don't know. I suggest that.
Not while you're driving.
We're going to get sued. Aegis is going to get
If you're
sued.
stuck, I'm saying. If
Leah's
you're
involved in a
stuck.
fender bender on 20. We don't want that
It's
to
like my
happen.
book will be on the dashboard.
I do love when I have a new book and I'm going to stop by. I'm like, oh,
I gotta read for a minute.
Just for a second.
I listen to a lot of audiobooks when I travel, and so that's what I'm usually listening to in the car.
I was just reading over here. Let's talk about read alouds really quickly. I know we touched on it, but how did you plan for them? And I want to encourage parents here because readers are really built or born on the laps of their parents and grandparents. And I was not a reader growing up. I was a struggling reader. I don't remember my dad or my mom reading a whole lot to me. I had books available to me. I remember sitting in my dad's lap. My dad would show me the Bible. I remember that because we had this beautiful illustrated Bible. So I remember staring at it. But so I want to encourage parents, no matter how old your kids are, whether they're 4th, 5th, or 6th. I have some friends who've got kids who are in fourth grade, or is he a 5th grader now? Regardless, they are reading a Bluebonnet book together. And then yes, she has a little one that's in 1st grade that they read together every night. But let's talk about read alouds and how did you incorporate them and how did you plan for them?
Well, you know, I am one of Scholastic's reading ambassadors, and Scholastic every 2 years puts out a report called the Kids and Family Reading Report. And they do the survey in once a year, and then they publish the results the next. And the past few years, they've really been asking families about read alouds because, for exactly what you've said, we know that children need those early literacy experiences. Also, a child reading with a parent or with a caregiver is receiving pleasure messages about reading. They're listening to a fluent reader read out loud to them. We also know that read alouds are an incredible source of background knowledge for vocabulary, for concepts. But what we see in that, what Scholastic found in that survey was for families, if they ever did read out loud to their children at home, they often stop reading out loud to their children when their children begin learning to read independently. So the peak years for reading aloud at home seem to be around 1st or 2nd grade. It only tracks about 2 years higher at school. The peak years at school for read aloud seem to be about 3rd or 4th grades. And then kids are hearing dramatically less reading aloud at school, which is unfortunate. Because if you think comprehension strategies, story schema, pleasure messages about reading, background knowledge for science and social studies, those aren't solely the domain of elementary school. Kids need those all the way through the years. And my 6th grade language arts class, teaching world cultures and world history, I used a lot of picture books to build background knowledge. Because my students didn't have it. I'm supposed to be teaching them about world history, and they couldn't even find more than 4 countries on a map. We've got to do some background knowledge building. We know that a lot of comprehension, 60-70% of comprehension is background knowledge. So read alouds all the way through the years, and talking with parents about how those read alouds might turn into read besides. You know, we both, maybe even to a book club. We've got 2 copies of the book, and I'm going to read it, and you're going to read it. and we're going to meet every once in a while and talk about it. I've seen families who transition their read aloud time at home into something more like that as their kids get older. So if they think sometimes parents and caregivers think that their middle schooler is not going to sit with them and be read to anymore. I think they should try it. They might be surprised.
Well, I know when I have a picture book for my 5th and 6th graders, they get excited.
Yes.
Even if it's a picture book.
I still read to them.
I still read to them.
Well, we read the Harry Potter books as a family until my oldest daughter was a senior in high school, because she was, that generation that the books were being published
Yes.
every few years, so, and she had a lot of struggles in school, and that read aloud may have been the one time in a day we were all together as a family for 15 or 20 minutes, not doing homework, not, racing a kid to a sports practice or anything. Now, I also want to give parents a little slack and go, I understand sometimes you're not going to get to it. It's just, it can't be weeks you don't get to it, or months you don't get to it, I mean,
keep doing it.
Keep doing it. And I even tell parents, put books in the back of the car, the pockets in the back of mom and dad's seats in the car, or grandparents, or whoever the car is, aunts, uncles. Throw some trivia books in there, joke books, those National Geographic books with the animal trivia in them. Kids love those. They can just read facts, read random things about animals. It doesn't necessarily have to be a novel.
Right. It doesn't have to be a novel. It's true. It doesn't have to be, it could be nonfiction, whatever the kid enjoys.
Right.
I want to talk about having rich conversations with our students and colleagues about books. So I've been trying to talk to teachers about how to start these rich conversations, whether it's a sign outside the door that says, like, I have Mrs. Campos' reading. So I post what I'm reading, and then I keep. What are some things that you did?
You mean to guide just to increase the culture of the conversations?
To spark a
around
conversation, to pique a kid's interest, all of that.
Well, I think one of the best tools in our toolboxes is book talking. Those heartfelt, and I don't mean a dog and pony show too, where teachers are writing a script, or librarians have to write a script, or they have to have some kind of special book talking hat. I don't necessarily feel like you need to have all those things unless it makes you happy, and then I want you to have them. But I think those heartfelt testimonials where I'm just standing in front of my classroom on a Monday morning and saying, folks, I read this book over the weekend. I couldn't wait to come in here and tell you what it was about. Here's a little bit about what the book is about. Who would like to be a trailblazer and read this book first for the class? That works. That works. In fact, it got to the point where my second period and third period classes would come complain to me, Mrs. Miller, your first period class gets all the new books. I just saw Bobby walking down the hall with the new Diver Wimpy Kid or something. And so what I started doing then was I would book talk the books in every class. I've got Ziploc bags, and if any students were interested in reading that book, I cut up a whole bunch of index cards. I had a student helper who would pass those out, those little white slips of index card. And if kids were interested in reading that book, they would write their name on it and the title of the book, throw it in the Ziploc bag. So I'd book talk first period, second period, third period, and then last class of the day, I would do a drawing for the book. You would think I was giving away a car. Kids are beating on the table. I mean, look at what they're winning. They're winning the chance to read a book before their classmates do. It's basically FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And I would pull a kid's name, and if that kid had been in my first period class or second period class, I would give it to a kid in third period and say, okay, go down to Miss Allison's room. If she's not, I think Enrique's in math right now, and he just won the book drawing. If Miss Allison's not standing at the front of the room teaching, slip this on Enrique's desk. So imagine you're Enrique. You're now sitting in math class. Next thing you know, you're the book winner.
Yes.
And everybody else knows who has that book too. So all the kids who put their name in that bag are now looking for Enrique on a daily basis.
Like, when's he going to be finished?
When's he going to be done?
Hurry up, get it done.
They also know who's interested in reading the book. So I think book talks are huge. Librarians, of course, doing book talking when students come down to the library visits. I think librarians naturally gravitate towards a lot of that book talking as part of what you do. Next level, administrators doing book talks on the announcements. And what we're doing is modeling for kids how to talk about the books. We're also putting a lot more books in front of them. I mean, if you imagine as a classroom teacher, if I only did a couple of book talks a week, my kids might hear 100 books in a year that they might be interested in reading. That builds up their book knowledge and their excitement. Ultimately, we want the kids talking to each other about books.
Right.
So after we've modeled what book talking looks like for them, I think setting aside some time in the classroom or even library visits for that ritual or routine for kids to celebrate and share with each other.
And I even tell people, just carry a book down the hallway. just carry, like have teachers just carry a book with you, or have that sign, because that.
Right.
I want to read that book, Mrs.
Currently
Campos.
reading.
Yes,
I put it on my email.
I saw that.
I even put what book I'm currently reading. Now in my classroom, I would forget to change it on my school email.
Yeah, see, I would be forgetful.
And like I just realized, I probably need to change the one on my personal email.
It's okay.
And I was bad about remembering to do it. And I thought, who would be better at this than me? My students, probably. But I'm not going to make my students in charge of my email signature or reminding me. So what I did was I added a student recommendation to my email. And every week I would say to a different class, okay, what book are we recommending to all the people who get an email from Mrs. Miller this week? And we would discuss it as a class, and I would go change it on my email. And then while I was in there changing theirs, I would change mine.
I love that.
Yes.
It's kind of my stealthy way of doing it.
That was your way.
Yeah.
I love that.
If you want teachers or parents to take away one thing from this conversation we've had, this episode, what would that be?
When we have good relationships with kids, they will do everything they possibly can to try to meet the expectations that we have for them. And that means that we have to really believe that reading is something that matters to them, that could matter to them outside of school. We've got to get away from just looking at reading as a school job and understand that it is a gift that will last them for all of their lives. How are we communicating that to the young people in our lives every day, at school and at home? That reading is something that can be an education, it can be a source of joy and inspiration, a source of escape for all of their lives, because they're not getting that message from us.
No,
They're not getting
school.
Enough of them are not getting that message. And so we have too many kids that are going to graduate from high school and breathe a sigh of relief that they never have to read another book again. If we do nothing else but communicate the value of reading for them for their lives, not just at school, I think that would be the thing I would want people to take away. Because so many of our kids are not getting that message from the adults in their lives, and it is a shame.
Donalyn, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You know, I am your #1 fan. I am her #1 fan. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming and being so passionate. And I know you travel so much with Scholastic and with your books, sharing your message of something that is really just so simple. It's really just down to basics. Just read and share your love of reading. And I just want to thank you for coming and honoring us with you here today.
Well, I feel very honored that you invited me to the show. I know that we've crossed paths many times.
Yes.
And it's just great to be in our hometown, in our
Yes.
home area of the woods,
Yes.
talking about the kids that we all serve right here
Yes.
in this
Exactly.
area. So thank you for inviting me and trusting me to be on the show.
No.
Thank you.
Wow. I just want to encourage teachers and parents. I don't think these are just meant for teachers. I mean, I know it talks a lot about classroom, but it talks about the importance of reading. And I am not a professional book reader. It's not my thing. But it reads so easily and it just makes sense. And as you can see how much I love this book, and it just speaks to my heart. And so if you have an opportunity to check it out from your library, I know we also have it as an ebook in Sora, I believe. Give it a read. I think it will really change your perspective and help you out in the classroom and at home.
And if you know any teachers that are going into the classroom for their first time,
Yes.
what a great book for them to have to
Great
guide them.
Yes, and Game Changer really talks about classroom libraries. I just love them.
And the working with your librarian.
Yes, because we are a great teacher. Your librarian is a great resource. I wish I was used to more.
Me too.
Come and talk to me about books in the library. You won't get me to shut up. I know you won't get Leah to shut up. I know, and I mean that in the best way possible and the sweetest, because you're like me, you just love to talk books. So
Yes.
anyways, but thank you for joining us on this episode of Pages for All Ages, and we will see you next time.
Bye.